Okay, everyone, welcome to our Star Trek, and this time we are doing a review of the first episode of the animated series, Beyond the Farthest Star, the series that launched the final moments of the original series, the rebirth of Star Trek, when syndication hit and they realised, oh, actually, people like this dumb sci-fi show. Let's commission some more and make movies and do new series. But before they did all that, they did an animated series, which was not canon, then was canon, and now is canon conclusively since they've included quite a lot of people. But this is like kind of, I mean, I've only watched the animated series once through. I've not watched it recently. But have you guys? How much of TAS have you guys actually watched?
I did the exact same thing. I as a Trek fan, I was like, I really should watch TAS, so I watched it once through, and I enjoyed it. But it, at the time, it wasn't enough to sort of have me rewatch it. But watching it again with you guys, I actually really appreciated a lot of it. But
which is ironic because we had so little to say on this watch along. We were actually like engaged in the episode. So yeah, no, I've only seen 2 or 3 episodes all the way through, which I should probably watch them ahead of time because our rewatch is not like a normal rewatch. It's basically just us trying to get in as many jokes as we can in a 42-minute period.
So this episode was written by Samuel A. Peoples, who, if you're not aware, was the writer on Where No Man Has Gone Before, classic episode, and is also additional writer, uncredited, however, on The Wrath of Khan. So he's had so a little bit of
Wow.
so he's I think additional, like not a major work, but maybe a few little lines here and there. But
he did all of Montalban's scripts, all of his lines, and Joachim.
So
in the TAS movie, they're gonna go back, and this the creature's gonna like want revenge on Kirk.
Yeah.
Yes, it's Star Trek: The Wrath of Khan, the animated series. How about that? Actually, if it was in this style, I would watch this. So yeah, this was great. Like, I kind of really enjoyed. Like, we say we were watching along, but I kind of enjoyed this. It was very, like, Star Trek's known for its technobabble, even for like original series standards. This was very technobabble heavy. This felt least like an original series episode than anything else I think I've seen, to be honest.
But it actually worked, right? Like, just the cutting back. What I mentioned during the rewatch is the scenes were a little more balanced between the main characters and supporting characters like Sulu and Uhura. One of the pieces of trivia that I think most people know, but I'll repeat it here just since this is our first TAS, is that originally they weren't going to hire back George Takei and Nichelle Nichols, and they were just going to have Doohan. Like, oh, you didn't know that?
No,
oh, yeah,
I
they were going to
didn't
have Doohan like do all these voices and Majel Barrett do all these voices. But Leonard Nimoy put his foot down. He was like, either they're in or I'm out. So he actually got them onto TAS, and the texture of having the diversity of voices definitely helps the episode.
Which, to be fair, for an animated series, like, they could have got anyone to voice it. Like, no, Star Trek was popular. It was, people loved it on the reruns, but they could have said, we're doing an animated series, and it's kind of like a Saturday morning cartoon thing, and they could have got anyone to do the voices. The fact they got the original cast back was a testament to, I think, how much they liked doing it.
Well, but they also cut a lot of corners, because you can hear Majel, whenever Majel's voicing a character, like, you can tell.
Yeah.
So even Doohan, to a point, he's talented, but there's lots of times you're like, okay, that's Doohan doing this character too. So
yeah, that's Doohan doing a Dalek.
Yeah. Yes.
Obey.
Yeah. Shall we jump in and talk about the biggest overall Trek continuity thing in this whole episode is like life support belts. Like, they just came in and just went, we could put these belts on it, anything's fine. We can walk in space, we can get crushed by, like, really heavy machinery. It's all fine, you're just wearing this belt. Like, that was a kind of, like, obviously we know at this point canon is like, well, whatever. But it's interesting that, going back to First Contact, if you imagine, Hawk, Picard, and Worf walking onto the surface of the Enterprise with just a little, Batman tactical utility belt. It's like, I've got my grappling hook here.
But to be fair, that scene is better for them being in the EV suits. So.
Oh, no doubt, but yeah, I am picking at straws here. Like, it is a very much a unique. This is an anime show. Don't take it seriously. Kind of almost in a Lower Decks way. If Lower Decks does something, we kind of go, haha, wouldn't that be funny? But I think here it's almost kind of egregious to kind of go like, it's a life support belt. We can do what we want.
Yeah, even though like the alien ship and planet designs on the show are great and they're very like psychedelic for the era, Filmation is famously super cheap with their assets, just reusing anything. So the idea of them having to redo like a second set of illustrations for spacesuits was anathema to them. So they just wanted to do a yellow outline.
Draw glow around them.
Yeah, I love the life support belts. I think it makes more sense. I think it makes sense that everyone on a spaceship would have a life support belt. In the case of accidental decompression, when you're constantly being attacked by Klingons and Romulans, why wouldn't you have life support belts of some sort on you at all times?
We just reviewed Naked Now, and they had the same plant in like 3 different scenes, but we're ragging on animated series for budgetary concerns. So
I think it's like,
that's right.
Could you imagine if you were going to the toilet and you left your life support belt on without knowing it? What would happen? No, just me? Okay, sorry, bringing it down.
No one goes to the toilet in the future, Idol.
Oh, sorry, yes, they
right out of you.
Yeah.
They've been...
and recycled into apples.
Which, by the way, that reminds me of one of my favorite, what is it, like pop culture references to Star Trek. In Breaking Bad, the guys are sitting around getting high, and the one is telling the story about how, was it Chekhov and Mr. Spock were having a pie eating contest, and like Chekhov was cheating by having Scotty beam the contents of his stomach out so he could keep eating more pie and win the contest, but then Uhura like distracted Scotty and he accidentally beamed his innards into space. And he does like a 5-minute monologue just on this stupid Star Trek theory, and it's like, yes, this is the kind of discussions that Trek fans have all the time. It was great.
That feels like a monologue that Quentin Tarantino would have ghosted.
Yeah,
for Breaking Bad.
Hey, fingers crossed. When he does the next Trek movie, that's what we're gonna get.
I'm for it. For it.
All right, how about the plot? I mean, this is a pretty much a very tropey episode, like for Star Trek. I mean, the tropey for Star Trek before tropes were a thing, really. It's the alien organism that infects the computer, takes over everything, makes demands of the crew, and then Kirk outsmarts it and puts his life on the line to sort of kick it out of the ship. But how do we feel about the overall plot of the episode for this one?
I mean, I like Otto said during the rewatch, like Star Trek actually originated a lot of these tropes, so it's hard to hold it against them for being tropey. But yeah, you have we've accidentally beamed something back with us onto the ship, which ironically was just in Naked Time that we just rewatched before. Oh, I mean, this is a completely separate day. Never don't mind that. But
yes, continuity. Come on.
Yeah, the ship coming alive. That's also like a major trope.
Oh yeah, bridge defenses. Like they have that whole kind of like
trope. I wrote down like 7 different tropes. You have the very masks, TNG masks feel of taking over the ship. You have Regik from Wolf in the Fold, which I think was also voiced by Doohan, or maybe they had whatever. Yeah, you have the Naked Now. You have the Galaxy Quest. I mean, this is not a direct thing, but the space belts made me think of when the slime covers them and they fly off into space. Because all they have is that little yellow glow. You have the malfunctioning defense system, which they did with Dukat and DS9. They did that with TNG and Data, like dodging the shots and stuff. So, yeah, it's hard to tell how many of these originated in TAS and how many were just like floating around there and have been reused throughout the ages.
I think there's a lot of like legacy big Star Trek itself started off with Harlan Ellison writing big sci-fi concept writers coming on and doing a lot of work like this, and this kind of has extended it. They start by orbiting a dead star and getting trapped in the orbit and finding a very sort of elaborate spaceship that they have to sort of go on and investigate on. These are like very deep sci-fi concepts that are worked in a 24-minute animated show, and they really cram it in, and it's what I say, this is very different from TOS, where TOS was more focused on the human story in a way, like, you know, how are humans different here, how are humans different there, and there wasn't, you know, budgets being what they are for a live action thing, you can't really do anything that's too alien, otherwise you have to kind of stretch the wallet a little bit. But here they had this huge great like web of a starship they approached, they had a whole sort of thing. That was the kind of the storyline I was more interested in before the alien kind of infected the ship. But even that, you know, a dead starship that was orbiting a dead star, trapped in its orbit, infected by an alien consciousness that has negative gravity somehow, ends up infecting the ship. You know, it's a great concept for a story. I like it, but it was rushed. I mean, it's 24 minutes, so where can you go with it?
Well, so when you first heard personally, or made aware that they did an animated series, what were your first thoughts in terms of seriousness? Because when I heard it, I think, oh, it's going to be a kid's show then. So that's part of the reason why I never got around to watching it. I didn't really want to watch a Saturday morning cartoon version of it. But all the budget they say from doing animation really lets you do that high concept stuff, which this episode was jam-packed full of.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's an animated show. They make no attempt to really gear this towards kids. Like Prodigy, on the other hand, is very like you can tell there's a lot of sort of thought, sort of deferential thought to the like research that like Sesame Street did in terms of how to like teach lessons to children through your storytelling. Prodigy. This is just a Star Trek episode cut down to 24 minutes. They're not really trying to like teach morality lessons here.
I think that was always the approach. I think like Gene Roddenberry came along and said like, you know, we're going to make he didn't want to make an animated series, but he eventually turned around to it to go, right, we'll do this because the interest's still there for us to get another. And this is back when he was thinking about doing phase 2, you know, like we'll get the interest there to then make another series. So I think that's probably why a lot of the actors came on board and was like, right, this is your leaping spot there. So I think it was always considered to be, for the time, probably the first adult animation. I can't think of any other show from that era because it's all Hanna-Barbera and, you know, Disney and that kind of thing. There wasn't really the concept of, oh, adults should watch this cartoon. Or they didn't know how to gear Star Trek to kids. Like, there wasn't... I was like, we'll just do the same what we've been doing and animate it in our funky, you know, our funky walks and our reactions and our soundtracks we're going to hear a million times.
Yeah, they're basically like, we'll cut out Kirk's romance. Like,
that's where the entire episode. 24 minutes saved comes from. Yeah,
yeah, basically.
You're not wrong, actually.
I do think the time suffered a little bit because they probably storyboarded ideas similarly to the way they did in TOS, but when you have to cut it down, you pull out a lot of character building stuff and the quiet moments, and that kind of segues into something else I want to talk about because we have a couple musicians here. They underlaid music the entire way, and a lot of it was kind of suspense building. Was it too much? I felt like by minute 15 plus, I'm like, okay, I need a breath now because we're kind of on this wild ride the whole time.
The music is like that the entire show. They have like 3 or 4 songs, and they repeat them. Like they basically had the orchestra in for like 1 or 2 days and went, here's your scores, record it. That's all we're doing. We're not doing scores for every single episode. This, you know, and they were on a budget. They were on a Filmation budget, so you know, you can tell. The theme song's great. I love the theme song.
Yeah, it's a little of its era. You know, it sounds like a prime time kind of drama show. Right.
Yeah.
Like they've switched. They were like, no more theremin. We're just gonna go trumpets. You know, I'm a little surprised they didn't just recycle the theme from the TV show, but this works. This works for like. I want to say kids. It's not kids oriented, but you know, it's an animated show, so it's a little more adventure theme than the.
I should play it to my children. I haven't actually played it to my children. I would be interested because I've got, you know, current day. I've got a 7 and a 4-year-old. Like, I've been intrigued to see what they make of it, whether they watch it or not.
Do your kids not think you're uncool enough yet? Do you need to?
No, they haven't worked out what cool and uncool is. I'm just the one that tells them what to do at the moment, and then they just ignore me. But anyway. Should we talk about best and worst moments, which is going to be an interesting one because this was a bit of a wild ride. They weren't really... Well, yeah, guys, best and worst moments. Shy. Yeah,
I
I'm
mean, I
picking on
like
you again.
the ship, like just the. I actually like the techno babble up front. Just to reference a show that's on now, Andor. There's like like tons of that show is just people sitting around a conference table talking, and it's fascinating. And maybe it's because it's one of the few moments in the animated series where there's quieter music, but it's kind of nice just hearing the old cast talking to one another. But I would say the best moment is in the show. The thing that I like is just the design, like the animation design, not the animations itself, but the style is it's very striking. It's fun.
My best moment was after they put on their weight belts and they beam over and they're standing on the exterior of this giant structure, and you see them, as tiny little stick figures. And it made me think. I've read a lot of Star Trek books, and as you're reading them, you use your imagination to paint the universe, and you have whether you realize or not, everyone has sort of a style. They picture things, either it's close to photorealistic, close to the series that characters from, or whatever it is. But it made me realize that this animation and what they were doing, especially in this moment, was probably closer to my headcanon when I read these books than even the regular series are. Because you can read books and think, oh, the character wouldn't say that, or they wouldn't behave that way. But the world you build in your head is always a little bit different, I think. And for whatever reason, just that style and the scale and the aspect of awe really worked for me.
Yeah, it really evokes. It looks like the old covers of like pulp softcover sci-fi
exactly.
books, which is just great. Were we supposed to name our worst moments?
Yeah, sure, go for it.
We'll circle back around.
Yeah,
Oh,
okay.
yeah, let's do.
Idle, give us your best.
Yeah.
I like how, I think, like, for just a moment, I like how much they gave Uhura and Sulu, like you said earlier, Shai, how much they gave them some dialogue that wasn't just sort of yes sir or no sir, like there was or just a corny moment where they're interacting with the crew. It was actually like a moment of they're interacting and being major proponents of the cast, and this will come more as we watch more of TAS. I think you'll see, I think there is an Uhura centric episode at some point, which is a great moment. But I did really sort of like how we got to know more of them, and I liked also the introduction of, although he doesn't say anything or do anything in this episode, like you see Arex on the bridge and you're thinking as an alien at the con, and we see TAS is a venue for more outlandish designs, and although they are in this episode maybe a bit more conservative, I think they do get a little bit more abstract as it goes on, especially when we get to like episodes that feature Spock 2 and things like that. So when it really goes off the rails, this was quite a conservative episode, I think, in terms of how off the rails TAS goes. But yeah, given the secondary characters a good time. How about worst moments for you?
Well, as much as I like the design and style of the animation, the execution of the animation and the like reuse of frames and the same running sequence. Filmation has done this their entire existence. I was complaining how in the rewatch how Disney had like 30-40 years previous to this innovated all this like multi-layer animation cell technology. You could shoot through it, you could kind of create this depth of field, and Filmation is just like, no, screw it, we're just gonna press everything flat, shoot it, and reuse that same sequence over top of different backgrounds over and over and over again. Even so, as a kid, even in like the 80s, like late 70s 80s, as a kid, I was like, this is terrible animation. Even for the time, it was not.
As you're drinking your juice box, you're like,
as I'm drinking my Kool-Aid, I was like, because in the 80s, like Filmation's big offering was He-Man, right? And even that was, they reused tons in He-Man over and over again, but even that was slightly more sophisticated animation. TAS. So when TAS would come on in reruns, I would sort of switch off from what it didn't catch my eye. So I had to wait till adulthood to actually watch it. So yeah, the animation technology is the worst part. Like the storytelling, the voices, that's all great, but then the actual animation itself.
Yeah, I don't have necessarily worst scene, but the worst aspect for me would be the pacing, because it did feel like they cut out all the character building stuff and just went with story, and
Bam, bam, bam.
and I love my Technobabble, but if you get 7 solid minutes of it, it's like I start to zone out a little bit. So I think that could have been a 42-minute episode, and they could have put in a lot of little extra bits for me.
I would go on the Technobabble for me as well. Like, it was a lot of it, which is fine. I don't mind that, but I think my issue was a lot of it was just nonsense. It was just like negative gravity and like the dark area of space, and there were a few moments where they were saying like initiate the warp drive, and then the Enterprise just shimmers and then it appears on the other side of the moon as like what even happened here. Like it was more kind of like it's animation. It felt like they were doing it's animation. Who cares? No one's going to care about this kind of stuff. But oh no, you do not know who you're dealing with here. We care about this.
But ironically,
go ahead. Shay.
That shimmering sequence is actually how warp drive would look in reality, because warp drive is supposed to be folding space around the ship, and moving space around the Enterprise. I wanted to say my alternate best moment of the episode is this sort of little fly Twilight Zone moment where they've stranded the entity on the planet.
Oh god,
and it's like, please don't leave me alone.
You actually feel bad.
I'm so lonely. Like, it was nice and dark for an animated.
And they just kind of just go, right, next system, let's go. Fuck all that.
I got to backtrack and shout this episode out. I can't remember the last time I heard someone talk about it. Vis-a-vis, the Voyager episode with Steph and the folding spaceship. Steph played by Dan Butler, who played Bulldog in Frasier, that's where I knew him from. But anyway, that was such a great concept of folding space, and and like you said, what they do with what's the word I'm looking for? The way they make it look, the graphics basically for that is totally different from the normal warp drive they have in every other episode of Star Trek. So that was a really cool concept, and that's not exactly where they went with this episode, but I just got to shout out Vis-a-Vis because no one ever talks about it.
Right. Yeah, it's funny because in TOS they never show you warp drive.
No, that's true.
Other than in the original pilot where they sort of overlay the starfield and start playing the theme song. Right. They all just show it kind of moving off screen.
No, going faster than light. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. You don't see it till the motion picture when they actually show you kind of zooming out, when they have the the wormhole problems, fire down torpedoes of it, and all that.
Right. The Pride warp drive.
Yeah. Not been tested. Should have listened to Decker. Anyway, we'll get to that. Getting sidetracked here. We're approaching the motion picture.
Don't stop on the Decker reference, please.
Never listen to Decker.
Never listen to Decker. I kind of want to say how much do you think like it took for them to get Shatner back in the booth? For what kind of money? Like, this is because do you feel like, aside from Nimoy was very Spock in this. Like, I was listening to him thinking, yeah, you're absolutely channeling Spock. You're doing everything. McCoy had a few lines here or there, but you didn't get any, like you said, Otto, you didn't get any of that sort of old country doctor sort of sitting down with his glass of bourbon with Kirk and chastising him about abusing the female crew members. But how do you feel about like Shatner in this? Like, because he was bringing a little bit of Shatnerism to it. But do you think it was this was just him walking into the booth and just kind of going, I'm doing my bit and I'll have my money? Or do you think he kind of put his full Kirk into this?
So to speak. So I haven't watched the whole series, but I've watched bits, pieces here and there, and there are definitely episodes where he's completely phoning it in. And there's other episodes where if you close your eyes, you could see him on the bridge of the Enterprise or wherever doing this stuff. So there's 2 moments, I think, where the alien zaps him on the bridge, and he goes from a normal speaking voice to like totally pain screeching voice, and it's like there's such a dissonance there where it kind of wakes you up. But it is hit or miss throughout the series to me. But at least the main cast are all recognizable because we watched so much TOS.
Yeah, for me. It's like sometimes Shatner, when he's bored or tired, the way like Nicholas Meyer would wear him down by making him do takes over and over and over again on Wrath of Khan. That Shatner is actually your best Shatner because he's tamping down his charisma and sort of bombastic nature and he's just kind of quiet, and that's often Shatner's best performance style. And in this episode, he's definitely not giving you full Shatner. It's just the tip. He's giving you just the tip of Kirk. And like in the one scene where
just the bridge defense module of Shatner.
Well, yeah, exactly. Where it's like, did you try the? He's supposed to, clearly the line's supposed to be, did you try the manual override? But Shatner goes, did you try the mutual override? And I'm envisioning that he was so like over it. He was just like, you get the one take. I'm not doing it again. Yeah. Like, but you got the line wrong. It's fine. No one's gonna notice.
We're gonna agree to override tonight.
That's
right. What we're gonna do.
So I'm having flashbacks, Shide, to your reciting Shatner and our charity stream, the Trouble with Tribbles episode, because that's muted Shatner, and the little Shatnerisms, all right, Ensign, or whatever you do, you can do better than I can, but the little Shatnerisms sometimes are things that only he and apparently Shyporn, only he and Shyporn can deliver. So
yeah. Yeah, man. Maybe that's why I'm an unemployed actor right now.
So it's similar to Schwarzenegger, where everybody can do get to the chopper, but no one can do like the quiet moments. Yeah. So,
are there quiet Schwarzenegger moments?
Supposedly, I can't recall any off the top of my head, but I'm sure they're out there. Somewhere in Jingle All the Way, or was that?
There is. There's a come on, Bennett. Stick a knife in me. See what's going on in there.
There you go.
And you found it.
There you go.
All right. I'm going to come up with the rating now. How many chief engineers being crushed by a clown? What? Did you have something?
Did you have one? Give it to us, Otto.
No, it's too late now.
No. He hasn't finished.
No, it's true. It's fine. No, you go for it. I just came up on the fly. If you've got something prepared, we'll go for it.
It's considering see, mine's too hard of the episode though. It's not obscure enough for stars.
Oh no, it's fine. No. Go.
How many fair use appropriated sci-fi tropes out of 10 would you rate?
Okay, that'll do.
That's fine.
Go on, Shy.
Oh. I will give this a 7.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a solid pilot for TAS. It's they hit all the points. I like, had the animation been better as a child, I probably would have watched more of the show. But the story is there. Yeah.
I've mentally, because I was thinking about this for the last 30 minutes. Mentally, it's sort of lowered over time. I put this at a 5. Fair use appropriated sci-fi tropes out of 10, because I think it's a good pilot, but it's a mediocre episode, and it's very polarized for me because I didn't enjoy the pacing when I sat through it. I didn't always enjoy while I was watching. Like we had just watched Naked Now previously, and I was having a good time the whole way through, and this wasn't always great. It didn't always land, but there's so much potential when you realize how much they can do with animation. All the scripts that are suddenly back on the table that they could do, hand drawn, and so in terms of, watching this for the first time as a pilot, would I want to watch more of this? Yeah, definitely. But the episode itself was a little bit kind of boring, a little bit too much story, too much technobabble, and so it's right in the middle. 5 out of 10. But
here's the thing, right? It's like when you're sitting down to a meal, the litmus test for the quality is, are people talking or not? Like, we weren't talking. We were just sitting there watching this episode until we realized we were recording ourselves. And we kind of forced ourselves to start commenting on it. So, yeah. But what's your
I kind of agree with the tropes? 5, but I think for different reasons. I think this kind of focuses on what people at the time thought the original series was without knowing what it was. Like, it focused on I know Star Trek is this ship that goes through space and they do things sci-fi stuff, as opposed to there is characterization with the crew and the cast, and there is those moments where the characters define themselves with the moral it had the moral dilemma, but it didn't focus on the moral dilemma. They kind of had this entity board the ship and they kicked it off, and then that was that. They didn't focus on what the entity's motives were or why it wanted to stay, or have Shatner try and sort of talk it out of it. They just kind of dealt with it, and I think it missed a few of the notes that made TOS as defining as it was for the reason it was so revolutionary at the time. But yeah, I'd say a 5, maybe a 6, maybe a 5.5. I would push it up to there. Like it was great, it was good, it was entertaining, but it wasn't the whole picture of what it should be. I think yeah. I think it lets down a story. Animation is kind of its own thing. I think I said to you, Shai, before we started, like, I like the animation because it is of its own style. It sticks to it the whole way, and that's kind of endearing in a way. Like, you know what you're going to get, as opposed to, like, you know, either overcomplicating certain parts but then cheapening on something else. It's just cheap the whole way through, but that kind of gives it its own style. Like, it's...
That's why I'm not deducting... I'm not deducting any points for the sort of the unsophisticated animation.
Yeah.
Technology that's going on. Like if I were to actually compare this to other animated shows, it would be very low.
Like the fact that, but the fact it's so stylized means like people. I forget the guy that produced it, but the guy that did the TNG TAS style one and the Voyager TAS remakes on. Go check them out on YouTube. They're incredible.
Those are
really
so
good. They are really good, and that's like testament to TAS having enough of an own style that people can replicate it. Funimation is much to credit to that as anything else for being so cheap, but it works, and I like that.
I have to shoehorn in one more subject after we've done the rating, but it just occurred to me that one of the things that maybe was a little bit jarring is they don't necessarily interact with each other. It's like they're reading their lines and they're all a part of the story, but the characters themselves don't interact too much with each other. And as someone who doesn't watch a lot of animation, maybe you guys can tell me how do you work that into a story? How do you get characters to interact with each other and have the viewer believe that?
I think Lower Decks is kind of like the example of that. Like, you feel like there's a connection between Mariner and Boimler, or you feel like Tendi and Rutherford definitely have a connection, because you have those moments where they have intimate moments, not like, intimate, but like, personal moments with each other, and you feel the storyline expand. But because this is paced in a sort of a way where the drama and the technobabble overtook the personal moments, they didn't have those times to sort of connect, and the story didn't allow them to do it, as opposed to the format, the medium itself. I think there's definitely
a lot.
Yeah, go on.
I was gonna say, a lot of times in animation, like, actors won't even meet each other. They'll just lay down their lines separately, and the director will direct them, like, well, they're doing it more like this, so you want to react like this. But I mean, they even did this in live action, right? Like, famously, Shatner and Montalban in Wrath of Khan didn't tape opposite each other because they're shooting on the same set, right? The Reliant was just a redressed Enterprise set, so they shot those scenes, I believe, like 3 or 6 months apart. They were just doing those in a vacuum, and it works beautifully. So it's up to the editor and the director to really put that.
Yeah. So, TAS, our first episode done. We will be back with our next Star Trek very soon. Keep an eye on the YouTube channel. And I think, I don't know what we're doing next. We have to leave it up to our subscribers. So if you are a subscriber, please, Twitch subscriber, that is, head over to our Discord, over to the sub channel. There will be a vote for you to fill in. So please go and fill it in and let us know which episode you would like us to tackle next. So from myself and the guys, we will see you later. Live long and prosper, and ta-ra.